Well, the missile attack on Israel from Iran has increased fears of regional war. Let's speak to Iranian political analyst Hamidreza Gholamzadeh. Very good to talk to you today. What response inside Iran do you fear after last night's barrage on Israel?
Thank you very much for having me. The feeling here and the emotions here across Iran is that people are showing their content and happiness with what has happened, especially after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh inside Tehran. Many people were asking and demanding the government to retaliate that operation, but it did not happen, and it was turning into some sort of disappointment for any reactions. But what happened last night turned people into the streets, and we had many people on the streets of Tehran and other cities, especially those cities from which missiles were actually launched. And people went to the streets to celebrate and to chant the slogans and such things to show their happiness with what has happened last night.
But what did happen last night, some would argue, is largely symbolic. 180 missiles fired across, nobody hurt apart from one Palestinian, we believe, in Jericho. How much of it was about sending a message to the Iranian people? How much of it was about sending a message to Israel?
It was not actually a plan to hit all the targets to the ground, because we know that Israelis are taking advantage of a good defense capability. But it was important to pass through that defense system, defense shield, and of course hit some targets. And according to the reports, both from Iranians and also from the Israelis, we know that some air bases and some assets have been actually targeted and successfully hit by the missiles. Usually, we know that from decades of conflict between Iran and Israel, we know that Iran is reluctant on taking casualties, human casualties, from the Israelis, and has always warned the Israelis not to do so. So if it did not have any, according to the reports, of course, we are not sure about that, but if there is no human casualties, it is because Iran is not insisting on taking such casualties. The one person that you mentioned, according to the news sources at the scene, it was because of the actually some damage from the Iron Dome missile, actually, according to the report that has fell on him and he passed away.
We understand that shrapnel may have come down and started a fire. Despite last night, is there a way, do you think, to dial down the tension to avoid this escalating even further?
I do believe that what happened last night is an escalation to de-escalate the situation. So yes, Iran retaliated in order to stop the Israelis from further attacks and further assassinations. Of course, it's not supposed to end the war in conflict in Gaza or in Lebanon, but it would actually de-escalate the tensions and warns the Israelis not to proceed and not to increase the tension in the region. And the fight between Lebanese and the Israelis, or in Gaza, between Hamas and Israel, would take some time to come to an end, as it was actually stopped after the Haniyeh's assassination. Iran stopped retaliation and held its fire because it wanted to have a ceasefire. There was some negotiation between Iran and the Western countries with the hope for stopping war in Gaza to save lives of people. So I do believe that what happened last night is going to decrease the tensions, and even if there is a response from the Israelis, which I doubt, I would believe that it would be or something like that, targeting maybe some infrastructures, not serious to my expectations. And if it is serious, there would be a massive response from Iranian side, because Iran did actually experiments in April, and it carried out some missile attacks. And after that, again, there was further assassinations, and Ismail Haniyeh and Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah assassination further on. So Iran knows that if there is another attack, it needs to target Israelis much more stronger than what happened last night. So it would be more serious. because it is about the security of Iran, and Iran has a serious red line about its own security. If there is the balance is going to be in favor of the Israelis and threatening the security and stability of Iran, Iran is not going to tolerate it and would respond seriously.
People in Iran worried about what Israel's response could be. I mean, you talked about people being out on the streets celebrating that there's been a response from Iran, but what about what is going to come next from Israel?
As I said, the maximum thing that I expect from the Israelis would be some sabotage or some attacks against some sort of infiltration, like the previous attacks in the previous years that happened, like, for example, in Natanz nuclear facility, or maybe in some other refineries or something like that. But as I said, I don't expect it to be very serious. Just like in April, after the operation that Iran carried out, Israelis tried to target Isfahan, but they failed to do so. The operation actually was a failure, and they could not do that. So I'm not expecting much more than that. Something like air raid or using fighter jets that they are being mentioned in some media analysis. I do not believe that would be possible for the Israelis, because it would have much more threats for them, either to come here, either to carry out a successful operation, the response that would be from Iranian side. So they are not going to risk such an operation, such a military operation, but they would they might try to attack somewhere with limited sources, some infiltration, some people, some agents inside Iran, just like the assassination of Fakhrizadeh, the scientist in defense system, or the nuclear scientist in the past, or, as I said, the nuclear facility in Natanz that they could damage years ago.
Final question. Where do you think this is going to end? What do you think the outcome is going to be? I don't know if you... Can you hear me, Hamidreza?
Sorry, I missed the question. Would you repeat
sorry,
that,
the
please?
final question was just, where do you think this is going to end?
I would expect that after a while, the Western countries would try to stop Israeli offensive operation. Land offensive in southern Lebanon would be a huge risk for them, and it would turn into a quagmire for them, and they would fail, as they did for the past 2 days. So the Americans and the Europeans, I would expect them to discourage Israel from escalating the tensions, and they would move towards some ceasefire. Because if this war extends and continues, it would be an existential war for the Israelis. The resistance network, I mean, Iran, Hezbollah, Yemen, Hamas, or these players in the region, they are not fighting for eliminating the Israel right now. But if this war continues the way that the Israelis are doing now, it would turn into an existential fight for them. So then the objective of the war for both sides would turn into a elimination of Israel or survival of the Israel. If it stops now, it would be stop further tensions and killing of people in Gaza.
We're going to leave it there. Sound is not great, but really interesting to talk to you, Ham.